the BetMGM game of the week. It's Michigan at Oklahoma, 7:30 Eastern, ABC, Herbie Fowler. Game day in Norman for this one. Sharon Moore returning back to his alma mater to try to get a win in week 2 of the college football season. Right now, Oklahoma favored by 6. All right, a little less than a touchdown, or a touchdown and no extra point, depending on how you want to divvy that one up. Both teams kind of have a new era vibe to them, don't they? Bryce Underwood and that new OC, Chip Lindsey for Michigan. You got John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle for Oklahoma. Both teams just kind of trying to get back to where those fan bases expect them to be, which is in that top tier in the world of college football. For Oklahoma, I think as you walk into this game, the feeling is, all right, we want to turn the page. This is where that starts. So listen, I love Illinois State. I love John Mateer going out there and breaking Baker Mayfield's record for passing yards in a debut with a smooth 392 yards. But you go beat Michigan at your place on that stage with that broadcast crew, with that pregame show there, people take notice. At this point, if they beat Michigan, I think we'd all say, okay, hang on now. We liked Oklahoma before the year, but depending on how this looks, let's say Oklahoma goes out and wins this game by 10 points. If Oklahoma has a 2-score win over that Michigan team, and knowing what they have on that roster and what Oklahoma is then capable of, what it would say about Oklahoma is, all right, they're here to play. It's only week 2, but they're here to play, and they're going to be a factor like we thought they would preseason. That's translating to what they are right now in the context of this 2025 season. Very, very early on, but still, I think there will be a lot to take away from that. Now, for Michigan, don't they kind of just have some sicko to them? You know what I mean? Like, I think Michigan, in the best way, they relish spots like this. Back against the wall, 6-point dog on the road, go to your head coach's spot where he's got some ties to them. Lot of vibe around the other team. You know what I'm saying? You walk in there and you feel a little bit like Michigan. The heavier the weight gets, the more they thrive, the more they enjoy that. Is that the case in this game with this Michigan team? We're going to find out, but I just want to make this clear. I don't think Michigan is in any way, shape, or form walking into this thinking they're a 6-point dog. Don't think that's in their DNA. Definitely don't think that's in Bryce Underwood's DNA. And this game is going to be awesome. There's a reason this is the BetMGM game of the week, all right? Non-negotiables for me. In this spot for Michigan, Bryce Underwood, I told y'all before the season started, I think there's going to be a game where Bryce Underwood walks out there and as talented and as freakishly gifted as he is, and as much as he has earned the job to be the starting quarterback at Michigan, there's going to be, again, in my opinion, a, quote, freshman game where maybe he's not seeing it correctly, maybe the game is a touch fast, maybe he's not all the way dialed in. I don't know what would have to happen before the game for it to play out that way for him. But I think that game is somewhere on the schedule for Michigan. This cannot be that game. Okay? Can't be that game. I think your freshman year in college, as a student, there's one exam out there that you're just inevitably going to fail. You don't know where it is or what class. Can't be this one for Bryce Underwood in Michigan. Cannot be. All right? Now for Oklahoma, my non-negotiable, kind of in the same tone, is like the offensive line has got to be serviceable. We said it for LSU in the Clemson game last week during this show. Same vibe for Oklahoma in this spot. Because if the offensive line for OU is just getting body bagged up front, but what Michigan has on the D-line, again, also Michigan, very good defensive line. I know you lost 2 first-round picks, still a very good defensive line. If they're getting blown off the ball and there's no sign of balance for this offense, then we can't unlock who we have at quarterback. Because John Mateer, I truly believe, is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But if he doesn't have more than a Mississippi and a half to find an open receiver, he can ad-lib, but I don't think you want to live off the ad-lib against that defense from Wink Martindale. So the offensive line has got to just hold up. Don't need you to be dominant. Don't need you to run for 200 yards and average 6 yards a carry. I need you to protect John Mateer. I need you to set us up with somewhat reasonable down and distance, right? So within this game, the matchups I'm watching, how does Michigan as a defense handle the tempo of Oklahoma? As I'm breaking this game down, I started to think about another game we got last year in week 2, which was what? Texas going to Ann Arbor to play Michigan. And during that broadcast, the first few drives, you saw Texas use a lot of hurry up. And Joel Klatt broke it down, I thought, really thoughtfully. He's like, you want to try to get this Michigan defense running side to side, wear them down. And so once you get them a little bit out of breath, essentially you're playing a step ahead. That's the same conversation for this game. If Oklahoma can utilize some tempo, Get those big boys up front from Michigan, breathe a little bit heavier, and you can force them to be in a spot where you are dictating terms to them. One, how many teams have done that to Michigan over the course of the last few years? Answer, not many. So at that way, already you're at an advantage if you're Oklahoma. Two, to me then, if you're playing a step ahead and they're a little bit more behind the eight ball, just stamina-wise, at that point, the big plays start to happen. You know what I'm saying? Because when you get tired, guess what? You get a little bit, not just physically fatigued, but also mentally fatigued. The assignment football part of it starts to dwindle a little bit. And with John Mateer back there, and with the skill players that I believe this Oklahoma team possesses on the perimeter, most notably Deion Burks, that's where shot plays happen. That's where you get the 75-yard touchdown from a Jaden Ott because we had a guy out of position, or we got a better push off the ball because Oklahoma was just going tempo, and Michigan can't handle it. If that's the case, awesome for Oklahoma because you're scoring points. But then you put the ball into Bryce Underwood's hands, likely at a deficit, more pressure on him to will this Michigan offense to then go score for score with John Mateer. That's not a situation I want for Bryce Underwood as a true freshman quarterback against this Brent Venables defense in Norman, Oklahoma, in a spot that should be rocking for that stadium. It should be. Now, that's not me saying Bryce Underwood couldn't still handle that, and maybe he goes out there and has a legendary night and Oklahoma scores 35, and it doesn't matter, Michigan scored 38 on the back of Bryce Underwood in that run game. But that's a world that is a lot harder for me to visualize than it would be if Oklahoma pushes the tempo and forces Michigan to keep score. I don't think that's probably the way that Michigan wants to play, and it's definitely the way that Oklahoma wants to play. Make that very, very clear. The other matchup I'm watching here, the coordinator chess between Chip Lindsey and Brent Venables calling the defense for Oklahoma. Because going back to what I said about Bryce Underwood and the potential for the quote-unquote freshman game where he has a couple turnovers and he's not seeing it, I think the task for Chip Lindsey is you want to protect Bryce Underwood from himself in some ways because he wants to make the big play. Not saying he's irresponsible, not saying he's careless with the football. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you are as talented as Bryce Underwood is and you have a limited number of snaps playing college football, you believe in your abilities at a very intense level. And that's not bad, but against this defense, it does open you up to, if you believe too much in yourself, and that window closed a little bit more quickly than it did in high school, bad things can happen. So for Chip Lindsey, how do you maximize Bryce Underwood and his skill set while also not putting too much on his plate and putting him in a spot where it's like, hey, Bryce, go win the game for us against that defense? You got to assist him, I think, if you're Chip Lindsey, with easy access throws. Honestly, for me, if I have Bryce Underwood at quarterback and I'm Chip Lindsey, I'm looking at what Auburn did against Baylor. I'm looking at what we saw Florida State do against Alabama. Like, I am shrinking the menu. I'm giving him a 1-2 progression kind of passing game to look at. And I'm saying, okay, if it's not there, Bryce, you might be the best athlete on the field, and you play quarterback. Let's do some design quarterback run. One of the best parts about Michigan's game they had this past week against New Mexico was they didn't have to run Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood got to do his thing from the pocket, had -5 yards rushing. Oklahoma does not have a gauge for what Bryce Underwood will be as a runner when it comes to actually seeing it on tape. So the advantage when it comes to element of surprise falls with Michigan. So obviously, if Brent Venables can throw some exotic looks at Bryce Underwood and get him off his game and cause him to kind of see things he's not seeing, well, then you start to press, you start to think, and when you think mistakes happen against that team, against that defense in that stadium, can start to tilt pretty quickly towards Oklahoma with the home crowd out their back. So I'm very, very excited to watch how that whole thing plays out. Now, a quick sidebar. When we do these breakdowns, we're trying to make sense of it all. We're trying to explain what we see during the week. We're trying to make sense of what we're hearing from an intel perspective. We're trying to break down how the game is played on paper. Guess what? Football's not played on paper. It's played on grass. And so with that being the case, I just have to throw this out there into the internet to make sure it's on the record before we give our prediction. There is a world now where Michigan and their traits, it may make zero sense going into the game, but then the game finishes and you're like, wow, I didn't know Michigan had that in their bag. They just willed themselves to a win, and the survival instincts came into effect there. Like, survival instincts is the best way I could say it. Hear about those people that are like lost at sea for a week or 2 weeks at a time, and it's like, how did you survive? It's like, well, killed fish with my bare hands, caught a bird, ate it raw, and like that was how I lived. That might be Michigan. That was Michigan and Ohio State, wasn't it? I mean, what, 20-some-odd point dog, roll in there, quarterback throws a couple of picks. Doesn't make sense on paper. But you watch the game, the survival instincts, the physicality, the culture, which is, overused to the nth degree, but it applies here for Michigan. That might be how they win this football game. So do not for a second count out the fact that it might not make sense in the box score even, but you watch the game, it's like, man, Michigan, they were the more physical team. They won the competitive moments. Saw that this past weekend. Ohio State won the competitive moments. Saw it with LSU, won the competitive moments. The 4th and goals, late in the game, those kind of plays. So that could be Michigan. Make it very clear. With all that being said, right now, I have to ask myself the question, what do I feel better about? And I start to look at this thing from a Michigan side and Oklahoma side. And I say, okay, which quarterback do I feel better about right now? Right now, it's John Mateer, who had a great debut for Oklahoma and accounted for 44 total touchdowns last year. Right now, I feel better about the coordinator OC continuity. Right now, I feel better about a Brent Venables defense up against a true freshman quarterback at home. So I think Oklahoma is going to win this game. 6 points feels like a lot. I think Michigan ends up covering. Full transparency, I don't probably like a number in this game as it pertains to a winner. Make sure you are subscribed. We'll have probably a total in this. We'll take a close look at. But at the end of the day, I think Oklahoma wins, Michigan covers, and at that point, Michigan's not a fraud. Michigan's not, any hyperbolic term you want to throw out there. They're just a team with a freshman quarterback that went on the road and lost to, in my opinion, now we'll see if it happens, in my opinion, a team that has much more talent than folks realize and one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and they won John Mateer. So again, Oklahoma to win, Michigan to cover. Cannot wait for that. Also, I don't think there's a result there that would surprise me all that much based on the survival instincts of what Michigan is working with. But that'll be fun, man. We'll be locked in for that one, as I know you will be as well.